I do want to turn back now to the Georgia runoff. NBC's Shaq Brewster is at a polling place in Atlanta. And also with us is Greg Bluestein, political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and an NBC News contributor. Shaq, obviously, we're going to turn from that breaking news that relates to the former president and talk about the former president's hand-picked candidate who's now involved in this runoff in Georgia. Herschel Walker facing off against incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock. You've been at a polling place all afternoon. Talk to us about what you're seeing and hearing from voters.
Well, what we're hearing across the state of Georgia is that voting on this election day is going smoothly thus far. That's what you're hearing from the Secretary of State's office. That's what you're hearing from Gabriel Sterling, the Chief Operating Officer for the Secretary of State's office. Waiting lines across the state are about 1 minute. That's about the average right now. So things are going smoothly. But I'll tell you, most of the voters that I've been seeing coming here to this polling location in Atlanta have left not with the I voted sticker, but instead with instructions on their correct voting precinct. This was a big early voting location, so people thought this was their main location. But the election official here telling me that the majority of people who have walked in have been turned away, told to go to a different location because of the confusion over where they can vote and their inability to cast a provisional ballot until 5 p.m. in the state of Georgia. Then there are the dynamics of this actual election. Once people get into the voting booth and they're making that selection between Raphael Warnock, the Democratic incumbent, and Herschel Walker, who's challenging him on the Republican side, there's what goes into their decision over who they're selecting. You heard Warnock really try to frame this entire campaign as one about character and competence, saying that Warnock doesn't have the character to become the next senator. And one interesting conversation that I want to share with you is from a Republican voter, someone who voted for Herschel Walker, but look what he said, or listen to what he said about what he was doing in the debate he was having in his head as he cast that ballot. What were those things that you were thinking about?
Well, voting, personal affection versus issues. If I were going to pick somebody to have dinner with, it would definitely be Warnock. He seems like a very interesting guy and has very intelligent, a lot to say. Herschel Walker obviously doesn't present himself nearly as well. But my feeling on the issues aligns more with what I think Herschel would bring. I voted for Walker. I definitely had second thoughts about that, or I thought a lot about whether I should do that or not. But I figured I came down more on the issues than on the personal.
If you only heard a piece of that sound, you may have thought that he was voting for Warnock in this election. But the question is, and the reason why I wanted to play that for you is in the state of Georgia, where there were about 200,000 people who voted for Kemp at the top of the ticket in the general election, but did not vote for Herschel Walker. Are those people going to come out for Herschel Walker in this runoff election? Is there going to be any gap in enthusiasm once we see what ultimately happens with the election day results? For Herschel Walker, it comes down to who comes out on election day, whereas we do know Warnock, if you look at the early voting data and the analysis of it, it did seem like he came into election day with a little bit of a cushion. So it depends on what happens at polling locations like the one behind me and across the state of Georgia.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And hearing from that voter, I think, says so much. Greg, let me turn to you. On that point, you could hear that voter really wrestling with this final decision and what Herschel Walker needs in order to pull out a win, because by all accounts, as you hear Shaq saying, and if you talk to folks on the ground, it does appear as though Senator Warnock seems to have the closing momentum. Doesn't mean he's going to win, though. So Herschel Walker needs to really have a very strong election day turnout, and he's got to get those Brian Kemp voters who didn't vote for him in the first part of this race, right?
Yeah, Shaq, you nailed it. That's exactly the challenge that Herschel Walker has right now. Yeah. Raphael Warnock, of course, he wants big election day turnout. He needs it too. But it's really Herschel Walker who has this uphill climb to go right now, because analysts from both parties believe that Senator Warnock has built himself a solid cushion with the 1.8 million early voters who have already cast their ballots. And so it's up to Herschel Walker to overcome that early advantage from Senator Warnock's campaign. And that's why he's dependent on huge election day turnout. We anticipate at least 1 million voters to show up. That's big numbers, but it's not huge numbers. We'll see how the afternoon goes. But we are not seeing soaring turnout in that many Republican bastions. And we're frankly seeing pretty heavy turnout in a lot of metro Atlanta precincts, DeKalb County, Fulton County, Cobb County, where Democratic candidates are typically favored. And then add to that extra layer of even some Republican-leaning voters are going to end up voting for Senator Warnock because of that split. We just heard that one voter who ended up holding their nose voting for Herschel Walker, but we've talked to so many others who are going to end up backing Senator Warnock, even though they might reliably vote Republican on other races.
All right. Well, we had a lot more questions, but because of our breaking news, we're running a little tight for time. So, Shaq and Greg, we have to leave it there. But thank you so much for your insights on this election day in Georgia. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.